Hi and welcome to the Peak Endurance Podcast. Episode 132 is answers to your training questions. A while ago I posted on Facebook asking for your questions for a coaching Q&A episode, and these are the answers to those questions. Ron comes on to help me out on this one, making for a fun and interesting chat too. I hope you get a lot from this episode, and don't forget to add your questions next time I post. Or, of course, you can just email me your questions and I will add them to another one of these special podcasts. Isobel at peakendurancecoaching.com.au. Now, if you enjoy this episode, would you be able to do me a favour and subscribe and write a review? I really appreciate all your support, and I love reading the reviews, of course. Are you sick and tired of being injured or running in pain and with niggles? Ensure you are ready for racing in 2022 and come in and see the team at Health and High Performance. Love running again by heading to healthhp.com.au/run, or you can easily find them on Instagram, Health High Performance. Wild Earth Australia are the online store to help you make the most of the outdoors with top quality gear at great prices. Peak Endurance podcast listeners are lucky enough to be able to use the discount code Peak Endurance, all capitals, to get 10% extra off at checkout. Head on over to wildearth.com.au to get everything you need for your next adventure. Now, as I have so few running coaching places left, I've started a new program, Peak Performance Mindset Coaching. This is one-on-one mindset coaching sessions, if I could talk, conducted over Zoom and recorded for you to keep. It is designed to specifically suit your needs of developing a peak performance mindset and approach to running. This is a very limited program as it is highly personalised, so I recommend quickly getting onto my website, peakendurancecoaching.com.au, and filling out the form to get yourself onto the waiting list. Now, don't forget, if you have an interesting story to share, email me, Isobel at peakendurancecoaching.com.au, and you might end up being on the podcast and one of these YouTube videos. Now, if you get value from this episode, I would love it if, as well as the subscribing and reviewing, if you could share it with a friend, either on social media or directly. If you do share it on socials though, don't forget to tag me so I can thank you. Have a great week of running and training, and have fun out there on the roads and trails. I hope you enjoy this episode. Ron and I had lots of fun making it. Till next time. Hardly say the word. If you're injured, because it mimics the running style, but without any pounding, it just is boring. So that's the problem with that one. Yes. And of course, it relies on gyms being open, which at the moment is, certainly if you're in Victoria, very infrequently. Swimming is also another good one if you are prone to injury, because it's non-weight bearing. For that reason, though, of course, if you're doing a lot of swimming, then your muscles and bones don't get the same strength benefits. Also, swimming it really is good for strengthening your lungs and those sorts of things. But and it's great. And every time the pools are open, I think I should go for a swim, but then I get so bored. So it all depends.
I find it very difficult swimming as well. It's a whole different use of your lungs.
Yeah. Yes.
You know, the whole holding your breath and breathing in and out quickly. I find, even though I'm fit for my running, I find when I first start back at swimming, I'm not fit for swimming because it's a whole other way of breathing.
And to be honest, it's the same with all of these cross-training things that, like certainly when I get back on the bike, I need to get my cycling legs again, you know, and you will. But the swimming is good with the breathing because it does, you know, I remember back in the day, we used to have those things where you'd breathe in and out of them to strengthen your lungs. Not the altitude masks, but something like that. So it is similar in that regard. It is good, especially if you have asthma. I believe it's good with helping with that. Walking is another good form of cross-training, which is something we do quite regularly because we have a dog now. So
He's not behind us now.
That's his bed behind us, the only dog I know that has his own bed. You know, so we take Jack for a walk every day, and walking is good because it loosens out the legs and it's not as high impact, but it is still being on your feet. So it does add to that. Now, we have recently taken up rollerblading, or I have.
Yeah.
Ron's done ice skating before, but that works the legs quite well, and it's a challenge. Let's put it that way. Especially going down a hill, and that's my only other concern, is like it's really good, but there is the potential for injury. I've only rollerbladed twice, but I haven't fallen yet, and which is just as well, because I refuse to wear knee pads. So yeah. Also, yoga is really good. There's lots of one-legged balances and mobility, which I actually think yoga is one of the best things as cross training. My personal favorites are yoga and cycling, or benefits for running. Cycling benefits running. Unfortunately, running doesn't benefit cycling, so it only works one way. But many years ago, I was injured and I couldn't run for 6 weeks, and I was just on the bike, and I can't remember when it was and what race it was, but I know I did really well in some races after that long cycling sessions, and I did a lot of the hard tempo work on the stationary bike, and that really strengthened my legs. So yeah. Do you have any questions yourself about cross training? Any thoughts about that?
Do you consider weightlifting or working in the gym as cross training?
Yes, it is. I just don't call it cross training, because to me, you just do it twice a week, year round. You should be doing strength training. To me, it's not should I do strength training, it's you do strength training. So I guess I don't think, but you're quite right. People consider weight training cross training. Yes, I think everybody should be doing that 2 times a week, like the whole body, upper and lower, and then once a week some core work. I'm not saying I always do the core work, but I do definitely do the 2 strength training sessions a week. If you were doing, say, 2 strength and 1 yoga, I would consider the yoga the core work. So
so should we be going into the gym and lifting as heavy weights as we possibly can?
Well, there is research that shows that lifting heavy really is beneficial to running, and I have done that. I always, and I would used to cycle my training really heavy in the base period, then moving towards more functional. But I find for the FKT, because gyms were shut, and I started off only doing body weight because we didn't have any weights at home, then we bought some, and I got into more lighter weight functional stuff. I just found my body held up so much better from having done the body weight and functional exercises. It didn't break down like I used to when I was only focusing on heavy weights. And I'm finding the same with the clients that I coach. They are getting the same benefits. So the reason you're not meant to do light weights is you already do enough endurance work. I'm not saying doing light weights and 30 reps. It should be heavy enough that 12 to 15 reps is enough. But previously, it was heavy, it was 6 to 8, 12 to 15 reps. But you're working the body in such a way that it supports your running. So you're working on similar movement patterns. Yeah.
And how about the plyo work that you do?
Yes, yes. So
also cross training?
Yes, it is.
Yes. Okay.
See how much cross training there is.
I'm just not sure whether that is, comes more to stretching or to cross training.
No, plyo is not stretching. It's more power. Power. Yeah, I guess. Especially as we get over 30.
Just a little bit over 30.
You need. We lose our elasticity. And especially the longer you run, you get more of that shuffle plod, and we need elasticity. Certainly when you're running in the bush, you need to be able to spring over those logs and that sort of stuff, and all those things you potentially can trip over. And doing some plyometrics adds to your explosiveness and your ability to move quickly, and agility and all that sort of stuff. And it's really important that you don't do too much. So I would not be doing plyo year round. I cycle it in and out of my athletes' programs, and as they get closer to a race, I will do a small amount of plyo. And when we do the plyo, myself included, it's only 5 to 10 minutes twice a week. Okay. Because there is the potential for injury, and I do not go in for all these box jumps and that sort of stuff, because I've heard of too many accidents of people hurting themselves. I've known personal trainers who've broken wrists, broken legs, damaged knees, damaged chins. So to me, I prefer to keep the plyo simple, but it is still highly effective. I have lots of different exercises and very, very effective and very important. Thank you. See, if you hadn't been here, I'd have forgotten about plyo.
So what you're saying is the purpose of cross training is not to injure yourself, it's
Yeah.
to not injure yourself.
That's
so
right.
if you go too hard in the cross training, then you're taking away from your running.
Yes, yes.
Excellent.
You know, and that's the same going with the cycling. I'm saying don't do the road biking.
Yeah.
And why I said potentially a gravel bike instead of a mountain bike. I used to race mountain bike, so I'm confident on a mountain bike.
Yes.
So that's not a problem for me. But for someone else who hasn't ridden a mountain bike
Like
before,
me.
you might fall off.
I might.
Like you.
Yes.
So therefore a gravel bike would be easier and sticking to fire roads and that's the stuff. That's not to say that's not any less beneficial.
Yep.
You can probably grind it out up a hill on a fire road better than you can trying to weave your way up a single track hill. But mountain biking is fun. There's that.
Okay. Moving on to the next question. The next question is to do with night running. How much of it should we do leading into a race, and what are the benefits? Why should we do it?
All right. So it's really important if your race is going to go into the night or through the night that you do some night running. You need to practice this. And there's a couple of good reasons. Firstly, you need to test what your head torch is like. And I'm talking about the beam, but other things as well. So you need to see, like, there are certain torches that have a really wide or narrow, what suits you the best. I always recommend head torches which have more than one light source. If it's just one, you don't, especially if it's foggy, you cannot see as well. And you just want a greater spread of light. Not only that, are you testing for the head torch, how comfortable is it? If you're running, is it bashing around all over your head? Can you tighten it? If it's tight and doesn't move around, are you getting a sore head? Certainly, if I have it too tight, it hurts my head. So I find, for me, the Petzl Neo, which is what you got me onto. Before that, I used A-ups, and they were great. But when you've got a lot of hair like me, they didn't sit on my head right, whereas the Petzl does. And I find it's much lighter as well. So that's another thing. The A-up is really bright and awesome. It's got this huge battery, and it weighs a ton, and the battery doesn't last as long. So you've got to think about all of those things, and the only way you can find out is to test them, even if you have to borrow them off friends. I lend people my head torch just so they can try different kinds. You don't always have to buy. Next, there is a difference between your depth perception with a head torch and then with during the day. So you need to find out what that's like, and it changes throughout the night. So as you move from evening to dusk to dark, that's completely different to when it's completely dark. So you need to test your head torch through those stages. Then again in the morning, going from dark to pre-dawn to dawn, it changes and your depth perception changes and everything changes, and you need to test what your head torch is like through those. Okay, so you need to train at night, in the evening, and you also need to train early in the morning. Okay, so that's what is recommended. Just do your runs at those times. It's not like doing extra running. You just do them then.
Okay.
How often? As often as you can. Not every single run, but maybe in the 2 months leading up to it, one run a week. Certainly, if you've got a race sort of in spring or something, you'll have trained through winter, so you probably will have run in the dark in the mornings. Yeah.
Okay. All right. The next question is, what sort of cross training should we do if we have Achilles or plantar issues, which may stop or definitely reduce your running? What sort of specific training recommendations would you suggest?
All right. So with Achilles and plantar issues, really, you need to train on the flat, because the hills, it's getting up in the toes and everything as you're pushing up hills and going down hills. That's really going to hurt it. Stick to flat, deload mainly. Okay. So cut back the kilometers. Stretch the calves for both. Both of those require calf stretching, and I would recommend rolling the foot on a ball. The person who asked about this asked about mountain biking. Now, I would say that the stiff bike shoes, and even you can get some mountain biking shoes. I'm talking about the clip-in ones because I'm considering that if you're riding, you're using clip-ins, not runners. Those stiff bike shoes can actually make plantar and Achilles worse. Especially if you're on a road bike, could make it worse. A lot of the mountain bike shoes they're going to be stiffer than normal shoes, even the mountain bike ones. So I would be really careful with that, because those stiff shoes will make it worse. So training recommendations for trail running: deload. And I would recommend getting off the trails for a bit too and sticking to, sort of flatter gravel paths. Maybe off the bitumen and concrete, but gravel, but not really technical trail and not too hilly.
Right.
And lots of calf stretching, lots of rolling, massage if you can, and possibly a lot of praying, because they take a long time to heal.
I do.
Yes, praying to the trail gods.
Okay, the next question, I'm hoping you can understand exactly what they're asking, because I'm not quite sure, but it says, can you coach a runner to be an ace pacer? And what would be the difference anyway?
I'm not really sure about the second
Yeah.
bit. What would be the difference? Can you coach someone to be an ace pacer? I guess you can, and I'm assuming you mean someone will pace you during a race. And I think this woman who wrote this was going to be pacing for somebody else, and she wanted to know. Right, so basically run with that person that you're going to be pacing. Find out what they're like, and maybe do some long runs. Find out what they're like when they get grumpy, if things aren't going well in a run, when they get hungry, and maybe some people don't really get grumpy. I mean, I don't know, but maybe they do. You need to also sit down and talk to them. What should I say to you when you feel this? Because they'll know what stages they go through when they're racing. Say to them, what should I do when you say you're feeling nauseous? What should I do when you're saying, oh my God, I can't go any further, I just want to quit, I'm pulling out at the next aid station? Tell them ahead of time, what should I do when that happens? Do you have any tips for pacers? Because you've paced me, and
I have, yes.
Have you paced other people before?
Yeah, I've paced one or two others.
Yeah.
The first thing you probably need to speak to them about is whether what they want out of you. Do they just want company? Do they want someone who is going to make sure they stay awake or don't get lost? Do they want someone who's going to push their pace or, encourage them to run? Or are they just happy for you to run along behind them and know that you're there?
Yeah, and that's it, because some people, and also, what do they respond better to? Do they respond better to, woohoo, you're awesome, you're doing great, or do they respond better to get moving?
Yeah.
Find out what they respond better to, because everyone's different.
Yeah.
And I certainly know for myself, I wouldn't respond well to someone yelling at me.
No.
But some people do, and some people, everyone requires different kinds of motivation. So find out from them, because they're the only ones that will know.
Yeah. And also the most important thing to remember is that you're actually there for them. So, it's not all about you, it's all about them. So the best thing to do as a pacer is to just understand the person you're pacing and to all within your power to get them to the end.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And also, you need to have bucket loads of patience.
Yes.
Yeah, because they might be going slower than you would like or normally would, and thus you might be getting cold. So make sure you've got lots of clothes too, and lots of food and all that. But yes, patience.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Next question. Can you transfer a 50-kilometer road training plan easily to a 50-kilometer trail event?
Yes, you can. Because basically, at the end of the day, you can transfer a road marathon training plan. And when we say transfer, I'm assuming you mean go through that process and still run a 50K trail race.
So you think you've been training for a trail marathon or trail 50, and then suddenly it turns into a road 50.
Yeah, or vice versa.
Yeah, or vice versa.
Yeah, easy. I mean, marathon training is sufficient for a 50K race. So a 50K road race training will be fine for a 50K trail race. Sure, you might not have done any running on the trail, and thus, you haven't got your trail legs. But personally, I think if you're training for a road run, you should be doing at least one run a week on the trails anyway. A couple of reasons: to develop leg strength and ankle strength and all that sort of stuff, and also just to mentally get off the roads as well. And it's better for the legs to have some runs not on bitumen or concrete. If you can run 50K on the road, if you know it's trained for that and you can do that, you can run 50K on the trails. It's for sure easy enough. It will be longer, it will take longer, it will possibly be a little bit harder. But you know what? If it's on the trails, you probably get the opportunity to walk up the hills. So bonus. And of course, in saying that, it's always best to train specifically. So if you know ahead of time, yes, you can use a road training program, but then do some of those runs on the trail. It's better to train specifically, but if you've done all your training for the road and then it turns out you've been cancelled and you're doing another one on the trail, it will actually be fine. It will stand you in perfectly good stead, because running on the roads gives you good speed and stamina, and that will carry over well to trails. Anything you think we can add to that?
Yeah, which is why, as part of a good training program, if you're training for the trails, is to add in some road runs, because it encourages speed, it encourages rhythm, which is always something that you don't always get out of the trails, and you actually run a lot more when you're on the road.
Yeah, which is way harder.
It is way harder.
There's no walking breaks except for traffic lights, unless you don't get any traffic lights, and then that really sucks. But sorry, talking about us.
Yeah, that's right.
But it is good to train on the roads, even for trails. So whether you're training for a road 50K or a trail 50K, you should be running on both trails and roads. So it actually shouldn't matter.
Okay, next question. Is the easiest way to get faster to train more?
Yes, and just keep training more until you're doing 100 hours a week training. That's right.
And at full pace.
That's right. And as fast as you can, every single run. No.
Oh.
No, if only it was that simple. Actually, thank God it's not that simple, because then we would all be training 100 kilometres a day. Because in certain cases it is true, the more you run, the faster you'll get. But that's only when you're starting from, like, as a beginner runner. And we've all noticed that when we're a beginner runner and we slowly pick up the amount of running we're doing, we're improving. But that's just because you're a beginner runner. Once you get to a sort of, a steady kilometre distance, there comes a point of diminishing returns, where increasing the amount of training you're doing leads to more injuries, more being run down, all those sorts of things. So there is a sweet spot, and the sweet spot is different for every person. My sweet spot personally is around 120 kilometres a week. Others, like yourself, it's more like 90 Ks, right? So it all depends. You need to know your own body. The way to get faster is to train correctly, not to train more. And you train correctly by mixing up between running on roads and trails, so developing strength. You train correctly by having some quality sessions where you, throughout the season, work on different elements of your fitness. And also you train correctly by having strength work and having easy runs and running easy on your easy days. I always say easy on your easy days so you can train hard on your hard days. If you don't have the differentiation in training and every day is the same, you will not get faster. And if you run even your easy runs, I always do this loop, each time I run it, I've got to get faster, then that's no longer an easy run. That's why I never try to run always the same loop. On my easy runs, I try to run different things, because then I can't compare it. And because some days I'll be absolutely shattered and it'll just be a plod. Other days it'll be a bit faster. I'll be feeling better. Run with how you feel, but that doesn't mean I'm feeling good, so I'm going to run really fast. When I say run by feel, today is an easy day. I'm going to run so that it feels easy. Yep. So it should feel easy. It doesn't matter if you're feeling good. That's great. That means your training's working. Yep. So take it easy. And then the next day, when you're still feeling good because you didn't wear yourself out, then you can train hard on your hard day. Do you have any thoughts on that one too, Ron? I feel like you do.
The thing to remember, as Isobel says, with running how you feel, if you've set out a plan or your coach has set out a plan to do an easy run, and you start your easy run and you get 3 Ks in and you think, I'm feeling really good, I might just pick the pace up. You have to work against that. You have to not do that. If it's an easy run, decide beforehand, or have, if your coach has decided for you, stick to that plan. There's a reason for that.
Yes.
It works.
Yeah.
So otherwise, every run you go out to, starts as an easy run, and then by the time you finish, it was no longer an easy run.
It's become a tempo.
Yeah.
And then every run becomes a tempo, and then you just either overtrain and dig yourself into a hole, or you plateau completely. And the plateauing is the good option.
I also feel like it's good to lay out a week's plan, because if you just go day by day and go, I'll see how I feel as to what I do, quite often you get to the end of the week and realize you haven't done a quality session, or you get to the end of the week and realize you should have done 2 quality sessions, but you did one yesterday and now you've still got to do another one.
Yeah.
So you're doing 2 quality sessions,
Back
one
to back,
after the other,
which is no good. Don't do that.
So plan your week out and stick to that plan as best you can.
Yeah. Yeah, so and that's what I said here. Mix up the quality sessions. Now recovery runs, more can lead to overtraining. So more is not always better. Sometimes less is better. And if also by the same token, talking about running by feel, if you start doing a quality session and you're feeling really terrible and not good at all, and you can't hold the paces, sometimes it's a good idea to change it to an easy run. And I've been known to do that. I've started I've been like, I'm not quite sure how I'm feeling. I'll give it a crack. I go out, I try to do some of the session. I can't, I just change it to an easy run, because there's always, and I don't try and make it up the next day. My body's telling me something. So I listen to my body. The next day I still do an easy run, or I'll have a rest day or whatever it is. And then I just go back to the quality session when it was next in my plan. I don't add it in and double up quality sessions to long runs to whatever. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Next question is, how many A events first of all, what is an A event? And second of all, how many A events should a recreational runner plan for in a year?
All right. So an A event, there's Jack.
Peeking over the corner.
Hello, Jack. Sorry to those people who are only listening, but our dog has got his head between our shoulders, sort of. An A race is your priority race. Okay, now it's possible to have A races, B races, and some people even go so far as C races. I just think A and B races. A races are your main races. B races would be your training races. And I guess a C race might be just one that you do to socialize with friends. I think it's really important to do B races. B races are so good at training your nutrition, training what it's like being with other people when you're running and not getting caught up with them and their paces, training for going through aid stations and carrying all the kit and what it feels like on race morning and the nerves, because you still get nervous even though it's a B race. I don't know about you, but I certainly do. So it's really important to do B races and not to treat every race as an A race. And the reason for that is I think you should do probably 2 to 3 A races a year, which I know some people won't like hearing, but your body only has so much, and your mind, so many races that it can put 100% into. You can't keep putting 100% into races week after week after week, not in ultras. And even in 5Ks, if you're trying to race your park run every week really hard, that's going to eventually break you down as well. Sometimes your park run should just be a tempo session. Nothing wrong with that. It's a quality session, So 2 to 3 big A races a year. I would, 2 to 3. Because you need to factor in that you're going to be tapering. You need to factor in that you need recovery, and that takes a lot of time. If you do tapering and recovery properly, if you do more than 2 to 3 races a year, then all you're doing is tapering and recovering. I'm not really sure when you're doing your training. You can use B races as training, like tempo runs, like I said, or for training all the different elements, and that is equally worthy as an A race. Maybe it won't look as good in your results, but who are you racing for? You're racing for yourself or for other people? Hopefully you're racing for yourself and what you want to achieve. So work on that. Use that time and use the C races. I guess probably C races are valid to socialize with friends, take photos, go do a scenic run and that sort of thing. I also think it is fun to do races, to go and train in different places. So yes, I understand why people want to race a lot, but for A races, which is 100% effort, 2 to 3 a year. Have you ever known people to do more than that?
I have, just in recent times, I've been reading up on a certain runner, should I name? No, who has raced a lot.
And there are people over the years in all countries that have done that. And generally what tends to happen is they burn out in some way, shape or form, whether it's through injury. I've known athletes overseas who have gotten chronic fatigue, adrenal fatigue, which is kind of the same, although some doctors say it doesn't exist, but I don't know. It's a thing. But generally injury at least. And so we need to be super careful. The human body is a complex machine, for want of a better word, but it does have vulnerabilities. You can't just keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. There comes a point where it says enough, and if you don't listen when it's telling you, when it's whispering to you, it is going to yell at you, and it will yell at you by injuring you or making you really sick until you have to stop, and you don't want to be in that position. So sometimes you have to put not so much ego aside, but the pride perhaps aside, and go, this race, I'm not going to, people are going to see that I'm not pushing 100%. I'm just, using it as a training run. And tell people if you want to, this is a training run. You're not sandbagging if it's the truth.
Yeah, and every now and then you see someone pop up like your Killians or your Pat Farmers who, have that body where they can go out and they can train 200 to 250 kilometres a week.
No.
And, there's a temptation for us to go, well, if he can do it, why can't I?
But they're the genetic anomalies.
That's right. You shouldn't be comparing yourself to those sorts of people because they're very few and far between.
Yeah, exactly. And probably, I don't know, fortunately or unfortunately, we can't all be like that. Fortunately, because it's great that we're all different. And all that means is you have to be more creative with your training and your racing, and you have to be more selective and really choose the races that mean something to you. I don't know about you anyway, but certainly with the prices of races, I wouldn't be able to afford more than 2 to 3 A races a year.
That's right. Especially if they're big enough to consider them an A race, then they're generally pretty pricey.
Yeah, and it's not just a race. It's going to be travelling. It's going to be the kit you need. It's like, whoa, who can afford that? So there's that to take into consideration too. But yes, my role as a coach and my aim is to get people to be in this sport as long as possible, because I love this sport and I think everyone else does. We're not runners because we don't love it. Yeah. And we want to run forever, for as long as we possibly can. And the only way we can do that is to look after our bodies. Doesn't matter how young you are and think, oh, it's so far in the future, I don't need to think about it yet. Believe you me, I used to think like that, and here it is. It comes eventually. Yep. You do get older but that's awesome for starters. But then you just have to be more creative with how you go about doing things. But yes, even when you're young, look after your body, because it's the only one you got, and you don't want it to say to you, that's it, you are not running anymore. Yep. Yeah.
Very good. Okay, next question.
Just having a look at how many more questions we've got. How long have we been recording?
I didn't look.
Neither did I. How professional is that? I'm just wondering if we should do this one as the last one, but I can't. Well, let's do this one, see how long it goes.
So there is quite a bit of conjecture about using poles. Yes. Some people think that using poles is cheating.
And I think, although we won't say his name, I think we know who wrote this question. Yes. The question is using poles cheating?
Yes.
Well, obviously me, being the person who loves poles, would say no. And it's actually not cheating unless the rules say you're not allowed to use poles, which some races now are saying that.
Even in Australia?
Not in Australia. No. Sorry, I was thinking of overseas races. Yeah. I was meant to be doing Barclay Fall Classic this year. When I did the Barclay Fall Classic in 2018, we could get our poles from approximately 3/4 of the way. This year, no poles were allowed. Right. So, which was really interesting. I've got some, it was a very hard race. But that, I was like, oh my God, that would have been so super hard. But so in that case, yes, it would be cheating. If poles are allowed, then it's not cheating. And I know it was a tongue-in-cheek question, and the person was more meaning, it's not about the rules, but is it cheating in the moral of the sport? Yep. I still don't believe it's cheating because I don't know why, but they help. And is wearing runners with grip cheating? Is carrying lightweight gear cheating? Is wearing a better head torch than you cheating? Yeah. If I get a better head torch than you, am I cheating? Should we all have exactly the same equipment like they do with the Formula One? Everyone has to have everything the same to be the only way that's not cheating. So no, it's not cheating, because we all have different things. We all have different budgets and we all have whatever. So there's that. Poles are not cheating, but they do help immensely. They make a huge difference, and I highly recommend them because they make it way easier. Not cheating, just easier. There's a distinction.
It's not cheating if everyone can do it.
Yes, if everyone has the capacity and is able to do it if they want to, then it's not cheating. But yes, does make it easier. It makes climbing the hills way easier. It makes descending technical, slippery, horrible hills, and especially when your legs are knackered by the end of a 100-miler, makes that easier. It even makes the flats easier when you're really tired and exhausted. So I highly recommend poles, but they've got to be used correctly, because I have seen people using poles correctly, and then I tell you, it's not helping at all. It's just making things worse because you're carrying this weight around with you that's not actually helping. And also those people, I've known of people who've bought poles, pop them in their pack and not use them for the whole race. Once again, carrying weight that you don't need to carry. So if you're not going to use them, don't even bother. And if you're not going to use them correctly, don't even bother. But if you use them correctly, they are an immense help.
Excellent.
And you started using poles once you met me, didn't you?
That's right. I'd never used them beforehand. I was a hand on my thighs, push off on my thighs sort of person.
And nothing wrong with that, except you don't get as much air in your lungs because you bent forward so much.
Never really thought about it, to be honest. I didn't have poles, so I didn't bother using them. But once I started using them and started to use them properly, I've noticed it has been, especially once we start doing a lot of elevation, it's a huge help.
Yeah.
And now, I almost, gasp at the thought of having to use my hands and my thighs to push off.
And then it's funny because the other week we went for a run and you said, "Oh, can we do it as a poles run?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah. So, considering we did over 2,000 meters that day.
Yeah. I was like, thank God for the poles.
Yes.
It is good to train without the poles as well as to train with the poles. Train without the poles to develop the leg strength. Train with the poles to get used to using poles. Personally, for myself, I've never had problems with poles because I did a lot of skiing. And I think once you know how to use poles when you're skiing, you pretty much know how to use poles.
Yeah.
You didn't really use poles. Didn't scare you for snowboarding more?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So if you're a snowboarder, it doesn't apply to you. No. Yes. So I think we will do one more question.
Okay.
This one. I didn't highlight that one, but that is that one.
Okay. Some good training and race day food and nutritional ideas for someone suffering a food intolerance or dietary requirement. Specifically gluten intolerance, but there are many others other than gluten intolerances nowadays.
Yep, go on.
And how should we use it for training and running, especially a 24-hour event? And with the training, what sort of nutritional advice would you have for muscle building and recovery?
Alrighty, so when they're saying
I guess it's a twofold.
Yeah.
What do you do on race day and what do you do in training?
Yes, and the heater's come back on. That's why it's boiling in here. The muscle building, I'm presuming they're meaning more sort of stopping muscle breakdown.
Yeah.
All right. No, I'm not a dietitian. And if you have a gluten intolerance, you probably should be seeing a dietitian to talk about that sort of thing. I'm getting my Cert 4 currently in nutrition, so I do have some nutritional knowledge, but legally, I need to say that you need to speak to a dietitian. I'm just giving you advice based on what I believe. So basically, if you're gluten intolerant, you know what foods you can and cannot eat. But basically, that doesn't change. You use that in your racing and training. You use your gluten-free breads, although God knows they're a bit sort of dry and hard and you'd have to choke that down.
They're better now.
They are?
Not as bad.
Yeah. When was the last time you tried something?
It's been a while, but I know people who are celiacs and the bread, 5 years ago or even 10 years ago, the bread was more cake than bread.
Oh, I thought it was more cardboard.
No, it was more cake than bread. But now, it's...
Well, I was trying some gluten-free bread only a year or two ago and I thought it was horrendous, but that's just me.
That's just because you spoil it with the good bread.
Yes.
When you can't eat the good bread, then I guess, your expectations change.
Yeah. So, but basically you should be used to that and you should know what you can have. I mean, to be honest, I can't tell you what you should eat because only you know. And so obviously go for gluten-free stuff. And if you have any kind of intolerance, like personally, I've got quite a lot of food intolerances. I don't eat food from the aid station because I don't know what I'm getting. So I will only eat food that I pack for myself. I hide my drop bags, or I'll have a crew, whatever it is, I will eat what I know I can eat. And so especially if there's home baked things, I won't eat that because I've been known to do that and I was horrendously ill. So I would not be eating anything from the aid station, only bringing your own foods. And that includes drinks because the prepackaged drinks, they make them from powders or whatever. You don't know what's in that. It could have something in it that sets you off. So either go onto the website of the race and then find out what they're using and train with that, or don't use anything at the aid station. Those are your two options. But you don't want to be trying something new on race day. It's a well-known piece of advice not to do anything new on race day, and that includes any of the food at the aid station that you have not tried before. And certainly with the drinks that they make up the aid stations, my other issue is even when you've tested them at home, everybody makes them up differently. And I can tell you, when they've got that huge vat and they're scooping it in, they don't know. It's so hard to tell. And you like your electrolyte drinks really sweet. I like it really weak. So if Ron made it and he tested it, oh yeah, that's perfect, and I went to drink it, I'd go, oh, that's horrible. So they may test it and they may go, that's perfect, and you might drink it and get instant stomach cramps. So even if you've tested it, personally, I still believe you should only be drinking your own things. I take little sachets of the electrolyte powder that I know works for me. I only stick to my things, and I always have done that. To be honest, I don't even drink their water because chlorinated water upsets my stomach. So I only drink filtered water. So yes, I'm a bit of a princess, but
it does create some issues for us when we do a long run.
It does, because I can't drink from the taps. That's why I make sure I bring all my own drinks as much as possible, because I hate buying bottled water. But when I'm racing, I have to admit I do use bottled water, and I feel terrible for it, but I just cannot drink. I literally cannot drink chlorinated water, and I instead, I just don't drink it because it actually makes me sick, physically makes me sick. So don't eat from the aid stations. Train with what you have, what you know you can eat, and race with it too. In regards to foods for muscle building and recovery, well, I highly recommend protein in whatever source you find suits you ethically and financially and whatever. So personally for me, I eat meat. So I will have some form of meat at lunch and dinner, I'll have protein powder on my porridge in the morning. I'll have peanut butter on my toast for snack. So I always have some form of protein source with every meal. You really need protein for muscle recovery and rebuilding. And I'm training most days twice a day. I'm either running in the morning and then weight training in the afternoon, or in a normal world, maybe doing yoga or something else. So I'm at least going for a walk. So although that's not training, it's doing something. But certainly if you're training twice a day, you need to make sure you're getting lots of protein. And even once a day, you need protein. And when you finished your run, you need some form of protein when you finish. And protein helps keep you feeling fuller for longer. It's more satiating. I don't know how to say that. Satiating. Yes, I think you're right. I just can't speak sometimes. There's certain words I find really difficult, and even though I know that's how you say it, I won't be able to say it again. It's like that bone in your back that I can't say. Tailbone.
Yes.
So
funny when you try to say
I can't say it. We've had lessons in it, and I still can't say it. So basically, if you have any kind of intolerance, it could be gluten intolerance, it could be whatever it is, or if you're vegan, or if you're whatever, you stick to what you know works for you, because you don't know what you're getting at an aid station. And so just stick to what you know. What are your thoughts on that one?
I don't know if we want to get into this, but talking about planning your nutrition for a race, setting out drop bags, what sort of food should you be eating? What sort of plan should you make? What sort of calories should you be taking in a race? And what sort of foods should you be eating to get that calorie?
Once again, whatever suits you. You should be consuming anywhere between 200 to 300 calories, although I've also been told 300 to 400 calories, but I think that's almost a bit unrealistic. 200 to 300 calories an hour. And personally, I have a list of foods that I've written out with all their calories, and that includes, sandwiches, wraps. So I've calculated it all. Then I work out what I'm going to eat to maintain those calories, and I bag them up for the different sections of a race. It's whatever works for you. Now, I find certain things that work for me that don't cause my stomach to get upset, but then I've also found certain things that work for me that don't cause my stomach to get upset. But when I race on this particular day, they do upset my stomach. Okay. So it's like, I was just speaking with a client. It depends. What did I eat the day before? Am I well hydrated? It all depends. If you need to be really well hydrated to be able to digest foods properly. So no matter what you're eating in a race, you need to be making sure you're still drinking water. Not over drinking. I'm not talking about that, but sipping. So otherwise you end up with this huge bolus in your stomach, which is a huge lump of food, and it can't go anywhere, and you're running and it's jiggling and it's horrible. The water helps to break it down and helps you to digest it. And that actually, we might as well finish the questions, because what causes stomach issues and how to deal with them when they arise, that's what I'm talking about, drinking lots of water. What causes stomach issues? Like I said, it depends on what you have eaten the day before. Also, you can go back to the podcast number 119 with Louise Burke, or number 53 with Ricardo Costa. A lot of great info there. I'm also soon going to be interviewing Patrick Wilson, who is the author of The Athlete's Gut. I'm interviewing him towards the end of October, 20th of October, and his book is all about stomach distress in athletes. So that's one to look out for. That will be out around early November, I'm presuming. But basically, 200 to 300 calories per hour, fluids regularly. Just make sure that you don't eat anything with heaps of salt and heaps of sugar, because those things tend to upset your stomach more.
And also, it's a bit easier when you've got crew rather than drop bags, but plan for the unexpected.
Yeah.
One thing we found when you were doing your FKT was we made all these plans. We spent the week beforehand, making bags full of all the nutrition that you're going to possibly need.
And I didn't eat any of them.
And you got 30 k's in and it all went out because you couldn't stomach it.
Yeah.
So if you've
260 kilometers with.
Yep. If you've got a crew, just make sure that they're aware that you might pull into an aid station and go, no, whatever I said I wanted last time, I don't want it now. I can't stomach it.
Yeah, we took all that food home and I just ate chicken.
Yep.
That's it.
So, and chicken and noodles.
Yes.
So just be aware that no matter how much you actually plan for race day, once you get there, that might all go out the window. So the sign of a good crew is to have backup options.
And for a drop bag, I would recommend also having backup options, just different things in there. And sure, you might throw it away at the end. If you've got a dog, give it to the dog or something, but have maybe some fresher sort of things available, because you just don't know. There's nothing worse than going, this is all the food I've got, and by God, that just makes me feel ill looking at it. That's really depressing. So, in that situation, you might just have to force yourself, but they have some other options around.
Mm-hmm.
Next question.
Okay, next question. How do I maintain my mental and physical state when injured and can't run when all I want to do is drink beer, eat pizza, and disassociate yourself from running altogether?
All right. Now, I'm sorry, but then you're just going to have to, basically do the complete opposite. You're going to have to volunteer for races, volunteer for, say, Aura, where you might not even have to go to the race. You can just help out online. But I just find you really need to stay involved in the running community. I haven't been injured in a long while where I've had to take time off from racing, but many years ago, I would just go if I was injured, I'd go and volunteer at races, because it kept me in the community. It kept me feeling good about it. This is the time when you should actually be really focusing on your running. Do find a form of cross-training. That's why I also think having cross-training in your program is really good, because then if something happens and you get injured, it's not like, oh my God, you've got to pick something up from scratch. You already know how to do some mountain biking. You're already good at yoga. You're already used to swimming. So you can do that, and you've already got that, and you maybe even have some friends who do those things, so you're still seeing people. And yes, I understand about the wanting to drink beer. For me, it's wine, eat pizza. And, maybe for 1 or 2 nights, do that. It's okay. You're allowed to feel upset and you're allowed to wallow in it, but just you're not allowed to stay there. Okay? You can be there for a day or two, but then that's enough. And you need to go, right, I'm going to, pull my socks up and just get back into it and do some form of cross training, even if it's walking, and just get out there, volunteer, stay involved in some way, shape or form.
Okay, very good. And I can speak from experience. Volunteering at races is a lot of fun and it's really rewarding. I've volunteered at many races, and the atmosphere, whether you're in an aid station or as a marshal, the runners really appreciate it and they're really engaging, and it's really rewarding. It really makes you feel good about the environment and the community.
Yeah.
So it makes you want to be a part of it.
Yeah, that's right. And yeah, you might get a bit of FOMO, but that's right. It just motivates you to do the exercises the physio gave you.
That's right.
For more than a day.
All right. And the final question we have is back to the cross training. How to make road cycling effective training for mountain running when injury and rehab means not running for months on end? So
basically that goes back to that other question, and I probably should have just slotted it in with that. Lots of tempo rides, really, really hard work, lots of hills, and lots of standing running drills. I also really recommend on the stationary bike, obviously not on the bike when you're out in the trails, single leg drills. So that's what I would sit on the bike and just unclip one leg and just spin with one leg for 30 seconds, then swap legs, spin. Okay. And that really gets the balance back in the legs and make sure you've got equal strength in each leg. So they're really, really beneficial. Tempo rides, I would be on the stationary bike and I put it into a harder gear and just crank it out for, 10 to 20 minutes, then have a 5-minute break, then do it again. It really makes such a difference. And the standing running drills are about as close as you're going to get to running up a hill as you can without actually running up a hill. So that's basically that. And that is all of the questions. We got through them. Well done, us. So I hope you've enjoyed this, or we hope you've enjoyed this and gotten a lot out of it. And if you have more questions, please feel free to post them on the Peak Endurance Podcast Facebook page, and then I can get to them. And if I ever post again saying I'm doing another one of these, please make sure you add your questions. And of course, you can also email me your questions, Isobel@peakendurancecoaching.com.au. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.